in this episode, I wanted to look at the study called the Adventist Health Study 2. And in this study, it took 96,000 Seventh-day Adventists, so it was a large sample size, and it was all ages of adults, 30 to like 112, and they were living in all 50 U.S. states. And what they found as far as protein intake was pretty interesting. They found that the vegans in the group were eating almost as much protein as the meat eaters in the group. And they actually broke it down into 5 different categories. In the study, they had the non-vegetarian or just regular meat eaters. They had the semi-vegetarians, who I'm going to guess maybe just cut out one type of meat, or maybe they only ate one type of meat. They had the pesco-vegetarians, who are pescatarians. The lacto-ovo-vegetarians, who are going to eat no meat or fish, but still eat dairy. And then you have the strict vegetarians, who are also labeled elsewhere as the vegans. Although I will mention, for some reason, there was a slight amount of animal protein intake, but it was pretty small. It was, 2 to 3 grams per day on average. So, maybe somebody was getting an egg or a little bit of cheese here and there. But for the most part, over 95% of their protein was coming from plants. And so what they found is when they looked at the study, they found roughly the same intake of protein across all of the groups. And this included the vegans, who were getting almost the same amount as the meat eaters. And they were getting slightly less, but it wasn't a huge difference. It looks like, between 5 and 10 grams per day. And also they were getting, on average, around 71 grams of protein per day, which is well above the recommended daily intake, which is around 46 grams for sedentary women and 56 grams for men. So they were getting enough protein, and they were getting the majority of their protein from plants. And this shows you that you can absolutely get all of your protein from plants, and you can get as much, if not the same amount or more, of protein as meat eaters. And I think this study also makes a very good point about something. They noticed that this group of vegans had a higher protein intake, slightly higher than other vegan groups that have been studied. And they basically came to the conclusion they thought it was because they're eating whole grains and nuts, and they listed a couple other types of foods. And what I immediately noticed when I saw this was, I said, well, they're eating a whole food plant-based diet. And as I've mentioned in the protein podcast and elsewhere, the importance of eating whole food plant-based is you will naturally get more protein. You'll also get more fiber and everything else that's good for you. But whole food plant-based food sources naturally have protein in them. All of them do. So whether that's just potatoes or brown rice or quinoa or definitely soy, even vegetables, you're going to be getting protein. So these people who are eating whole food plant-based throughout the day, they're getting a constant supply of protein, and it's meeting their daily needs. So this kind of debunks the protein myth that you have to eat meat or dairy in order to get enough protein, or just as, these people are getting just as much protein from plant-based sources. And another interesting thing was that they did get some protein from soy, but it wasn't a whole lot of protein. Surprisingly, it was, less than 10 grams per day. And so that means, you don't necessarily have to rely on soy for your protein needs as well. Soy is a very high protein source. But this shows that you don't have to consume soy in order to get enough plant-based protein. Soy is a high plant-based protein source, but if you are intolerant to soy or you just don't want to consume it, you can still get enough protein elsewhere. I do recommend it. It is a high source of protein and you get a lot of benefits from it, but you don't have to. So I do want to mention that the non-vegans in the Seventh-day Adventist group were eating less meat and dairy on average than the average American. So if you did compare these vegans to probably a standard American group, there probably would be a little bit of a wider range in protein, a wider gap. However, they did have a low soy protein intake. So when I said you could get as much protein as non-vegans, is if you choose to eat more soy tends to be one of the highest sources of plant-based protein, if not the highest source. So you can easily up your protein by eating soy and tofu. For example, soy milk alone has the same amount of protein as dairy milk. So, if they wanted to really focus on their protein, they probably could have gotten it even higher. And it was also noted that vegans who have been studied in other studies in other countries had a little bit lower protein intake than these vegans. And it was kind of mentioned that maybe due to a higher processed food intake for vegans in other countries. And this kind of just goes back to the whole food plant-based idea that, the processed foods don't have as high a protein in them. Although I will say that a lot of the processed foods tend to be adding more protein into them as people are becoming kind of more aware and more focused on protein. So that could change in the future. All right, as always, thanks so much for listening and taking your time out of the day. You can check the description as always for any links or useful resources. Leave me comments. And guys, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. All right, take care.